It's genuinely fascinating how human beings interpret the weather.
Oh, completely.
And by extension, I mean the universe.
Right.
Think about just a perfect Tuesday afternoon.
75 degrees, nice late breeze.
Exactly. Not a single cloud in the sky.
Yeah.
You step out your front door, you take a deep breath, and subconsciously you're just thinking, wow, the atmosphere is perfectly calibrated today.
Right. It creates this psychological illusion of a well-managed system.
Yeah.
Because the temperature is comfortable, visibility is higher, and because it aligns with your preferences, you naturally assume that whoever or, whatever is in charge is doing a fantastic job. It feels ordered.
But then let a Category 4 hurricane roll into that exact same zip code.
Oh, yeah, completely different story.
The sky goes violently black. The wind is howling so loud you can't even hear yourself think.
Yeah.
Massive oak trees are just snapping in half like twigs, and the rain is coming down perfectly horizontal.
Right.
Nobody stands in the middle of a hurricane getting pelted by flying debris and thinks, ah, yes, masterful organization, perfect control.
No, absolutely not.
In that moment, your brain just screams that absolute chaos has taken over. You assume no one is steering the ship, the system has failed, and everything's just been surrendered to, like random, pointless destruction.
Which exposes a really fragile mechanism in how we process reality, honestly.
How so?
Well, that immediate visceral shift, going from feeling entirely secure in the sunshine to feeling completely abandoned in the storm, it's one of the most universal human experiences there is. We use our immediate comfort levels to diagnose the structural integrity of the entire universe.
Wow, yeah.
And when things get dark, our default assumption is just that the person in charge has left the building.
And that assumption becomes incredibly dangerous when we start applying it to our faith and, our personal lives. So, welcome to Zion Recap for August 10th, 2026.
Glad to be here.
This is a special deep dive where we take a closer look at the source material and the messages shared at Zion CC. Today, our mission is to distill this truly powerful sermon delivered by Eric.
And the central theme is just so relevant.
It really is. We're looking at navigating life's relentless storms and holding on to the fundamental truth that Jesus is still in control, even when your personal world feels like it's being ripped apart by hurricane-force winds.
It's a profound exploration, really, because Eric touches on this raw friction between what we intellectually believe on a Sunday morning and what we physically experience when life falls apart on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, that friction is real. Before we jump into the deep end of this, though, I want to drop a quick bit of housekeeping for you listening. If you want to hear Eric's full original sermon, and you really, really should, head over to Zion CC's YouTube page and find the video with the exact same title.
Definitely go watch it.
Also, just a reminder that to catch the latest sermon live, you could always join the church on Sunday at either 9 or 11 a.m.
Experiencing these messages in the context of a live community, it just adds a dimension that you simply can't get in isolation, so that is highly recommended.
For sure. Okay, let's unpack this. Eric brought up a dynamic right at the start of his message that is just brutally honest. It is wildly easy to say the phrase, God is in control, when life is functioning like that sunny 75-degree day we were talking about.
No, exactly.
Your bills are paid, your health is great, your kids are doing well in school, you finally get that promotion. The phrase, God is in control, feels almost like a bumper sticker you just happily slap on your car.
Right, it's effortless.
But the second you step into a personal hurricane,
Yeah.
Medical diagnosis, a sudden job loss, a relationship completely falling apart, that phrase suddenly feels physically impossible to say.
Well, I mean, the human mind operates on a deeply transactional framework, right?
Yeah.
We subtly believe that if we behave correctly, if we input the right spiritual coins into the vending machine, the output should logically be a stress-free existence.
It's a spiritual vending machine. Wow.
Oh. Yeah, and when a crisis hits, that transactional worldview just shatters. We don't just feel pain, we feel betrayed. We assume that because there is a storm, there must be a lack of leadership.
To really dig into this, Eric rooted the conversation in a historical narrative from the book of Mark, right around verse 36. And it sets up this agonizing universal question, like, why do bad things happen when we are doing the exact right thing?
Let's look at the mechanics of that specific story, because the context is everything here.
Right.
Jesus issues a direct invitation to his disciples. He says, let's cross to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. Now, the disciples' reaction here is crucial. They are experienced fishermen.
They know this water.
They know this body of water intimately, and they obey immediately. There is no hesitation. There's no debate about the route or the weather conditions. They simply say, if Jesus is inviting us, we're going.
They get right in the boat. They do exactly what they're told by the person in charge. They hit all their marks. And what is their reward for this? Like immediate, unquestioning obedience.
The massive, terrifying windstorm.
Exactly, a storm. And Eric pointed out a detail in the text that the waves were literally breaking into their boat. I mean, these aren't tourists. These are seasoned maritime professionals who have spent their entire lives on that water.
Right.
So for them to be legitimately terrified for their lives means this wasn't just a standard squall. This was a freak, lethal event. And Eric highlighted that deeply human question we all ask when the water starts rising. Why me, God? How can I possibly be going through a storm if I'm obeying and serving you with all my heart?
Our brains just short circuit in that scenario. We conflate obedience with a magical force field.
It's like, okay, imagine you get personally invited backstage by the lead singer of your absolute favorite band.
Okay, I'm tracking.
You are handpicked.
Yeah.
You walk through the VIP doors. You follow all the security protocols. You stand on the exact piece of tape they tell you to stand on. You're doing everything perfectly.
Right.
And suddenly the roof caves in on you during the meet and greet.
Oh.
My first thought wouldn't just be about the pain. My first thought would be, wait, I shouldn't be in this room. If I was handpicked and doing exactly what I was asked to do, I should have been immune to this disaster.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the flaw in our theology of suffering, though. We think obedience purchases geographical immunity from pain.
Yeah.
But Eric pulls a massive theological paradigm shift out of this text. He says, being in a storm does not mean you are out of the will of God.
I have to be honest, that is a jagged pill to swallow.
Right.
Because if the roof caves in or, the boat starts sinking, my immediate psychological defense mechanism is to assume I took a wrong turn somewhere.
Right, like you missed an exit.
Yeah, I assume I am being punished for some hidden failure.
That is the karmic worldview creeping in. But look at the data in the story. The disciples were not running away like Jonah. They weren't openly rebelling. They were not out of bounds. They were standing exactly where Jesus told them to stand. The geographic center of God's will happened to be the geographic epicenter of a hurricane.
So doing the right thing doesn't earn you a pass from the weather. Which honestly leads to the next logical and maybe even more frustrating piece of this story.
Oh, yeah.
We're in the storm, we're doing the right thing, you're in God's will, but the boat is still filling with water. The stakes are life and death.
Yeah.
And where is Jesus during all this? According to Mark verse 38, he is knocked out, fast asleep on a cushion in the stern.
The visual contrast is stunning.
Right.
The physical storm is raging, seasoned fishermen are losing their minds in absolute terror, and Jesus is sleeping through the violent turbulence.
The disciples absolutely panic. They wake him up and basically shout, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to die?" I mean, it's an accusation.
It really is.
And Eric admitted during this sermon that he deeply relates to this panic. We are so quick to mistake God's silence for him losing control. We think if he isn't actively moving his hands and fixing the problem right in front of our eyes, he must have abandoned us.
Eric connected this ancient maritime panic to our modern psychology in a way that really strips back our cultural conditioning. He brought up our baseline societal impatience.
Oh, the drive-through story.
Yes. He used this incredibly sharp example of being at a fast food drive-thru.
Man, I felt personally exposed by that part of the sermon. The drive-through analogy hits way too close to home.
Think about the mechanics of it, though. We pull into a drive-thru line, which is an environment explicitly engineered for extreme convenience.
Right.
If it takes more than 3 minutes to get our food, we start getting physically agitated. Some people will aggressively pull out of the line and speed off.
Guilty.
Or if someone cuts us off in traffic, we instantly lay on the horn. We have been conditioned by modern technology to believe that friction is a system failure. We expect instant, frictionless results in every single area of life.
We really do. We want the quick fix.
Yeah.
We want a God who operates like an overnight delivery service. You track the package, you know exactly when it arrives, and you control the transaction.
Yeah.
When a personal storm hits, we want Jesus to wake up on our timeline. We want him to fix the medical report by 5 p.m. on Friday. And when he doesn't, when there is just silence, our brain interprets that as negligence. We think, well, the driver is passed out at the wheel, so I need to take over.
Right, I have to save myself.
Yeah, we try to fix our massive systemic problems with our own meager strength because waiting on a silent God Feels like a literal death sentence.
What's fascinating here is that that is a profound misinterpretation of the silence. We assume sleep equals a surrender of authority.
Yeah.
Eric unpacks this beautifully by pointing out that God's silence does not equal absence. The silence of God doesn't mean he lost the steering wheel. Let's look deeper. Jesus sleeping in the boat wasn't a lapse in his sovereignty. The sleep itself was the ultimate demonstration of it. He was so completely in control of the elements that he could afford to rest. He didn't surrender his authority just because his eyes were closed.
So, his timing is operating on a completely different axis than our drive-through condition schedules. He wakes up at the exact right moment to handle the situation. But the tension is that his right moment usually involves letting us sit in the dark much longer than we want to.
Precisely. Now, it would be easy for someone listening to think, sure, this is a fascinating psychological breakdown of 12 guys in a boat 2,000 years ago.
Right, like it's a one-off.
Yeah, an isolated freak incident. But Eric expands the lens to prove this isn't an anomaly. This is the documented historical pattern for anyone trying to follow God.
Yeah, he really brought the receipts on this. He walked through some major biblical figures to show that doing the right thing almost guarantees you will hit a storm. He brought up Job. The text literally describes Job as a perfect, just man who feared God. His spiritual resume was flawless.
Flawless.
Yet he lost his wealth, his family, his health. The roof literally caved in on his life.
And look at Joseph, a young man operating with incredible integrity. What did his obedience get him?
Nothing good at first.
Betrayal by his own flesh and blood, being sold into slavery, and facing false imprisonment. Severe compounding hardships, all while doing exactly what was right.
And then there was Paul. If you read the book of Acts, Paul's entire mission was simply to preach the truth. He was on the ultimate mission trip.
Yeah.
And what was his reward? Relentless persecution.
Yeah.
He was literally in a shipwreck, which mirrors the disciples' story entirely. He spent years in jail. Eric layered in some heavy scriptures to back this up, showing that suffering isn't a bug in the spiritual system, it's a feature.
Those scriptures are critical for resetting our baseline expectations, I think. Eric quoted Psalm 34:19, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers them from all." Notice it doesn't say few are the afflictions.
Wow, yeah.
Then John 16:33, "In this world you will have affliction, but Jesus has overcome the world." And 1 Peter 4, which explicitly tells us not to be surprised by fiery trials, as if something strange were happening to us, but to actually rejoice.
But, hearing all this heavy theology, I have to push back a little on how we actually cope with it in modern church culture. Eric referenced a really provocative quote from last week's speaker, Reuben.
Right, I remember that.
The quote was, "Just because the Lord uses you doesn't mean he approves of you." And it got me thinking about the psychological defense mechanisms we use. When we are facing these guaranteed afflictions, it is so incredibly easy to walk into a building on Sunday, put on this Sunday mask, and pretend everything is flawless.
Yes.
We act like the storm isn't happening because we subtly believe that struggling makes us look weak, or worse, unspiritual. We plaster on a smile, give a rehearsed greeting, and walk away. But the tragedy there is that in protecting our image, we actively avoid being genuinely known by God and by our community in the middle of our pain.
That is such a vital observation. The Sunday mask is a direct result of that false transactional theology we discussed earlier.
Exactly.
If you believe obedience prevents storms, then admitting you were in a storm is like admitting you failed. But if we connect this to the actual promises of Scripture, the Bible never promises a storm-free life. It actually promises the exact opposite. Eric referenced Isaiah 43:2 about passing through deep waters and walking through fire. The imagery is undeniable.
It makes you think of Psalm 23, right?
Yeah.
Walking through the valley of the shadow of death.
Exactly. The crucial promise of Scripture in all of those passages is never the absence of the fire. The promise isn't that you won't get soaking wet or that you won't feel the terrifying heat, the flames on your face.
The promise is the presence of God within the fire.
That is the fundamental anchor. The water won't ultimately drown you, and the fire won't consume you solely because he is standing in the middle of it with you.
Okay, so let's bring this down to the ground. So what does this all mean for you listening right now on a random Tuesday when your world is falling apart? We've established that the storm doesn't mean you're out of God's will. We've established that his silence is not absence. And we've established that hardship is a guaranteed part of the journey. But what is the actual mechanism at work here? Like, what does the storm do to us that a sunny day can't? Why not just skip the hurricane entirely and learn the lesson in a classroom?
To answer that, we have to look at the climax of the story in Mark. Jesus
Yeah.
finally wakes up, and notice he doesn't join in their panic. He doesn't grab a bucket and start frantically bailing water.
No, he's
He
calm.
simply speaks a word. He brings total, immediate peace to the wind and the waves. The environment shifts instantly. And then he turns to his disciples and asks a piercing surgical question. He says, "Why are you so scared? Don't you have faith?"
Imagine being the disciples in that moment.
Yep.
You were sitting there soaking wet, shivering, entirely in shock.
Yeah.
And they look at each other and ask, who is this man that even the winds obey him?
Yeah.
They thought they knew him. They
Yeah.
clearly didn't.
Which brings us to Eric's central thesis. The storm has a due date. It is a temporary, finite condition. It is not your permanent destination. But while you are trapped inside of it, something profound happens. You are forced into absolute dependence on God.
Yeah.
And because of that forced, unavoidable dependence, you end up knowing him in a much more profound, multi-dimensional way than you ever could when the sun is shining and you feel self-sufficient.
Eric shared a really powerful personal testimony during the sermon to illustrate what that forced dependence actually looks like in practice.
He did. He pulled back the curtain on his own life, stating very plainly that he wouldn't even be where he is today, standing on that stage delivering that message, if it wasn't for a mother who absolutely refused to stop praying for him when his life was in a chaotic storm.
Her persistence in prayer wasn't a light, casual thing. It was anchored in a deep knowledge of God that was forged through hardship. The storm isn't a punishment, it's an
It's
introduction.
an introduction, yes.
It is an introduction to a version of Jesus you simply haven't met yet. Think about it. When life is great, Jesus is your friend. Jesus is your co-pilot. He's an addition to an already good life.
Right.
But when the boat is sinking, when the water is up to your chest and your strength is entirely gone, you meet Jesus the rescuer. You meet Jesus the anchor. You access a depth of his character that is locked away on a sunny day.
That is the core mechanism of the storm. Let's look at what Jesus actually calmed in that narrative. Yes, he calmed the physical wind and the waves, which is spectacular.
Sure.
But the far more important miracle is that he calmed the disciples' hearts. The storm serves this incredibly aggressive, vital purpose of stripping away our false reliances. When things get truly dark, you realize very quickly what can and cannot hold your weight.
Exactly.
You realize your bank account cannot stop the storm, your status at work, your title cannot stop it. Even genuinely good things, like friendships, as Eric noted, human friends might fail you when the pressure gets too high and the storm lasts too long.
The hurricane forces blow away everything in your life that isn't nailed down to the floorboards. Everything superficial gets stripped. And what you're left with, when the wind finally dies down, is the realization that you were standing solely on the rock. You are left with the only thing that cannot be moved.
And that profound realization that Jesus is enough, when he is quite literally all you have left, is a knowledge that can only be acquired by surviving the storm, not by avoiding it.
It's a heavy, beautiful realization. But let's be completely real for a second. It is also incredibly difficult to walk out on your own. Processing the loss of your false reliances, dealing with the trauma of the storm, it takes a community to survive that intact. You cannot do it in isolation.
Absolutely not.
So speaking directly to you listening right now, if this deep dive resonated with you, if you find yourself currently bailing water out of a sinking boat and you need some clarification, or if you just have questions about anything you've heard or read today, you absolutely do not have to weather it alone. Please come to small group on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m.
We would love to see you there.
The folks at Zion CC would absolutely love to sit down with you, talk with you in person, dive much deeper into this sermon, and answer any questions you might have. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m.
Community is often the tangible boat that keeps us afloat when our personal faith is wavering. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought, a slightly different angle to mull over as you go about your week.
Let's hear it.
We've talked extensively about how surviving the storm introduces you to a deeper, more profound version of Jesus. But consider the inverse. What if the storm you're desperately trying to row out of right now is exactly the place where God intends to reveal his greatest power to you?
Oh.
Don't leave the boat. Don't leave your faith. Because what does that mean for the people who spend their entire lives successfully avoiding hardship? If you manage to insulate yourself, buy enough insurance, and avoid every major storm, are you actually keeping yourself safe? Or are you unwittingly starving yourself of the deepest revelation of God's power? Are the people with the most comfortable lives actually the most spiritually impoverished?
That is a massive question to sit with. Sometimes the comfort we crave is the very thing keeping us from the depth we need.
Exactly.
Just before we go, a quick mandatory reminder that Zion uses AI tools to help summarize information, sermons, and common questions.
Right, and while we work incredibly hard to keep everything accurate and true to the source material, AI can sometimes make mistakes or,
Okay, well,
hallucinate details.
so next time you feel the wind picking up and you see the sky turning a dark gray, remember, the system hasn't failed. You aren't abandoned in the chaos. The one who controls the hurricane is resting right there in the boat with you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.